Welcome to Advanced Audio Production Techniques. Our topic today is vocals. Before we get started, make sure you take notes throughout this lecture and while you are working on your project. The Q&A session on Thursday gives us the opportunity to answer any questions and discuss any issues that you have experienced or encountered during the video or while working on the project. We will cover many topics in this lecture. First, we will talk about recording vocals. Since every pop, R&B, rock, and country song contains and features vocals, and we all understand that they are the most important element of any popular production, it is important to have the knowledge on how to get the best out of the singer and the highest quality recording you can get. After we have discussed recording, we will explore all the techniques on proper editing, trimming, fading, notching, and discuss elastic audio to fix pitch and timing issues. If you have not watched the lynda.com tutorial on time warping and elastic audio, I recommend that you pause this video and watch the tutorial first. I also recommend that you do not start working on the project before you have watched the tutorial and this video in its entirety. But we are not done. We will also talk about doubling or tripling vocals, the differences about recording background vocals or choirs versus lead vocals, blending, imaging, and panning background vocals, and how to reduce our track count by recording the background vocals into a stereo track, and finally how to get a great, quick rough mix that will represent their and your work to the client efficiently without spending a large amount of time. Throughout this month, we will be working on one song, finishing the production and mixing it. The song title is Sweeter, and it was written by myself and a songwriting team from Bad Boys label called Trey NLA. We originally wrote this song to shop and were thinking of Shakira to be the possible artist for this song. At the same time we wrote this song, I was working on Crystal's album, so I asked her to demo the song for me, and once I heard Crystal's voice on Sweeter, I was convinced that she was the right artist for this song. The direction for Crystal's album was a little more raw than how I thought I was going to produce Sweeter. So we ended up producing Sweeter with minimal production for Crystal. Producing the demo for Sweeter, we used sequenced drums, sequenced percussions and synth bass, acoustic guitars, and sequenced guitars. We also used piano, strings, pads, sound effects, warm pads. I ended up recording 16 tracks of background vocals, and we have 2 lead vocal tracks. The session itself contains 9 additional take tracks that will be hitting when you open the session. So make sure that you know how to unhide and activate audio tracks. The first subject we will be discussing in detail is lead vocals. Singing is one of the hardest things to do well, and probably also one of the few talents given to us that, if we have it, we mostly don't work on improving it. A lot of that has to do with the natural ability is often already very strong. What many singers don't realize is that they could improve vastly if they would apply the same effort and practice that any instrumentalist puts into their work. If singers would practice every day, they would achieve a range and control they could never imagine. Singers might think they are practicing when they are singing all day, but that is actually not practicing. Practicing involves scales, music theory, and breathing exercises. A singer has to also be in excellent physical condition to perform at their best, especially live. Singing and producing sound involves every part of the body, from your lungs to relaxing the shoulders, from using limbs to keep time, or the resonant space in the head cavity. The entire body is part of the vocal performance. Considering the lungs and the capacity, pushing air is also an important part of producing the singing sound. The vocal cords are a muscle. That means if you overwork it, it will be sore. I often like to compare singing to working out in a gym. We wouldn't enter a gym and immediately pick up the heaviest weight. One usually grabs a light weight and warms up the muscle first. The same should be done before any recording session. Most singers understand that and take the time to warm up their vocal cord. This is usually why singers don't like to record in the morning. Talking throughout the day is warming up their vocal cords, so they usually prefer recording at night. But it is completely possible to record in the morning. If the singer understands proper warming up techniques, 30 minutes of scales, expanding and pushing their range, and breathing techniques, plus some light stretching, can get them ready for a recording session. So now that the singer is warmed up, we have to choose the proper microphone for the recording. Every singer sounds different on a different microphone. This is an important choice you have to make. And we can choose from 3 types of microphones. The first choice, condenser microphones, have a great frequency response from 20 Hz to 20 kHz and are the most commonly used microphone in popular vocal recording. You could also use a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones are often used for rock vocals because of their ability to be able to take loud signals. Another type of microphone you can choose from is ribbon microphone. Ribbon microphones have a warm sound and are great for jazzy material. Although ribbon microphones are a great choice for some genres and song material that requires smooth vocals, it is important to understand that ribbon microphones are more sensitive and break easily. The physics of a ribbon microphone make it impossible for the ribbon to react quickly enough to be used for high transient audio signal. Let me show you some examples of dynamic microphones first. Dynamic microphones are usually on the low price range and more financially accessible than ribbon or condenser microphones. They are capable of taking very high SPL, but have the tendency to have a very small pickup or polar pattern range. A few inches of change in distance from the microphone can produce drastic changes in the recorded sound. Here are some examples of typical dynamic microphones found in recording studios. The first 2 examples, the Sennheiser 441 and the AKG D112, are also great for drum recording. Many, if not most, of the dynamic microphones will work for high transient recordings. Often a favorite with engineers, ribbon microphones can produce incredibly warm and smooth recordings. This is why they are often chosen for jazz recordings or recordings that expose the lead vocal unusually high in the mix. Dynamic microphones and ribbon microphones both require excessive gain on your preamp, which can cause additional noise in your recording. Some of the expensive ribbon microphones actually have small preamps built into them that are being powered by the 48 volt of your console. But most ribbon microphones would be destroyed if you would enable the 48 volt. The examples that you see here range from $2,000 to $200. The most commonly used microphones in vocal recording are condenser microphones, with a frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz and their ability to take upwards of 130 decibels in input volume. They make a great choice to capture the singer's voice accurately, often with only minor sonic discoloration. Condenser microphones also give you the best input to noise ratio and acceptable output volume. Some of the vintage models can be quite expensive, in excess of $10,000, but you can also find many other condenser microphones under $2,000 and under $1,000. The Sony C800G is the microphone that I use for most of my vocal recordings, but I always dreamt of owning a Neumann U47 from the 50s. This particular microphone, if it is vintage, would be priced around $14,000 and is probably one of the warmest microphones you can record with. Many Nashville recording studios have this microphone available to their clients, and you can hear what this microphone sounds like on most Celine Dion records. Not all condenser microphones are that expensive. Many high-quality condenser microphones used in professional and home studios are in the $1,000 to $2,000 range, and many even under $1,000, and are capable of producing professional quality vocal recordings. Besides understanding types of microphones we can choose from, we also need to consider the different microphone polar patterns available. Please take a look at the graphics to understand the range the microphone captures around its capsule. There's cardioid, figure eight, omnidirectional, and supercardioid. The most commonly used microphone is the condenser microphone with cardioid pattern when recording lead vocals. You should always try all the available microphones at the beginning of your session. Set up 3 microphones at a time and record the singer to compare how the microphones translate and how the singer sounds. It's also important how it fits the song or genre or style of the song. I have chosen inexpensive dynamic mics over expensive condenser mics if a song required a different sound or it simply sounded better on that particular singer. I used a Electro Voice RE20, a $600 microphone, for most of the lead vocals on my record to achieve a warmer, closer sound than I was able to achieve with my Sony C800G. Even if you only have a few microphones to choose from, I recommend that you experiment with microphones and also with the preamps. Before we even start recording, we should have the session ready. I usually create 8 to 10 new mono audio tracks before the singer gets to the studio. The tracks will be named and the inputs and outputs set up. If you are familiar with playlist recording, you can simply create 1 track and 10 playlist tracks to accomplish the same thing. Just make sure that all the playlist tracks are properly named. Once the singer is in the booth and you have created an acceptable headphone mix for the singer, you should record the singer for the length of the entire song. This not only gives the singer the ability to feel the song all the way through, but it gives the producer engineered tracks that are continuous, unedited, and have a natural flow. The singer is often unaware at this point that he or she is being recorded. I usually ask the artist to practice the song while I'm still getting levels, which is actually not true, they are already set. This makes the singer more comfortable and relaxed. So after we have recorded 2-3 full takes of the songs that I'm confident about, I will call the singer into the control room to listen. This is the perfect time to discuss some details about what you, the producer, are looking for in the artist's vocal performance. The artist has shown you what their ideas for the songs are. Now it's time to embellish and improve on those ideas. It is also a good time for working on specific sections in the song, like the verse and the chorus. I will now record the artist for 4 to 6 additional takes for each section of the song, sometimes even more. Really depends how good of a singer I am working with. Whenever you stop a take and get ready for your next take, make sure you tell the singer exactly what you are hearing, feeling, or any suggestions you might have. When I get to the point where I feel that I'm 80 to 90% done with the vocal, I ask the singer to take a little bit of a longer break, which I will use to do a quick comp. Having this comp track gives me the ability to hear what is still missing to make this the best performance this artist or singer can accomplish. I would then ask the singer to sing along with the recording and punch in certain phrases, sometimes even words, to fix all the detail that I believe is still important to make this perfect. Remember that recording lead vocals can be a time-consuming endeavor. I've spent anywhere from 4 to 160 hours on one particular song. That was including background vocals. Since the vocal is the most important element of the production, it is important to be able to communicate your thoughts, emotions, and techniques to the singer efficiently. I have observed other producers in the past that were simply telling the singer to do it again, without any explanation of what it is the singer should change or do differently. This will get very frustrating for the singer, and they are not aware of why he or she is singing the same part for hours over and over. I remember a session from the Christmas record for NSYNC. After finishing with Joey in another studio, I walked over to another room where Justin was recording with producers from New York. I sat down on a couch in the back of the control room and watched as they would record a lead section with Justin. I saw them stop the recording, discuss with each other for 15-20 seconds what they thought Justin should do differently, but then simply pressed a button and asked him to, "Can you try that again?" This went on for about 30 to 40 minutes. And with each take, I can see how Justin is getting more and more frustrated. He finally threw the lyric sheet on the floor and came into the control room and asked them, "What is it you want me to do? Be specific." This was an important lesson for me. I naturally like to communicate my ideas and exchange with the artist how we can improve the song, but seeing how important it was for the artist to have feedback on their actions and performance truly made me a better communicator and vocal producer. It also showed me that it is important to understand the artist you're working with and to choose your words wisely, but be specific in sharing your ideas. At the same time, be open-minded to the artist's ideas. If you look at it from a purely psychological aspect, you should always begin your sentence with a positive statement to open the mind and then follow with your criticism or suggestions. This could simply be, "Wow, that sounded great, I love it," and followed up with, "But I just don't feel you are giving me everything yet." It can be a compliment and challenge in one statement. This is why it is important to know your artist well and have the ability to read people. As I said earlier, some sessions take a few hours while other sessions can take days. Make sure that the artist is able to last for the duration of the recording. And that is why the singer has to take breaks. I try not to go over 30 to 45 minutes of straight singing, and I ask the singer to take a 5 to 10 minute break. The singer should not be talking on the phone or talking to anybody. It is important that the singer rests their voice and relaxes. Make sure you have room temperature water and warm tea available for the singer during those breaks. I try to keep Throat Coat, a vastly available tea, at my studio for those singers that are aware of the tea's ability to extend their singing time. There are just a few more things we have to talk about in regards to recording the vocal. And one very important one is the recording distance to the microphone. To avoid something called the proximity effect, proper distance will result in a consistent vocal sound. 6 to 8 inches might look like a lot, but maybe you will find some documentations mentioning 4 to 6 inches or even 2 to 4 inches. But in my experience, it is the 6 inches that gives you the most consistent and even sound. You can see on this chart that at a close distance of 1/8 of an inch, The low frequencies around 200 Hz are much more prevalent than when your distance increases to 4 inches or more. This is called the proximity effect, and often the cause for the vocal dynamic processing in the mix to require an attenuation around 200 to 250 Hz. So, this is simple. The closer the singer is to the microphone, the more low, undesirable low frequencies will be in the recording. It is often unavoidable, especially when you are trying to achieve a recording that is intimate. Also, if your singer has a very low and soft voice, you will have no choice but to ask the singer to get closer to the microphone. As long as you are aware of having to process that proximity effect afterwards with dynamic processing, it's okay. If your recording room is very quiet and properly treated, you could actually maintain the 6 to 8 inches distance and minimize the proximity effect and simply add more gain. I have observed that dynamic microphones, especially the inexpensive ones, do not sound appropriate at a distance above 2 inches. Especially the Shure SM57 and Shure SM58 are examples for the limited range of their polar patterns and how drastic the sound changes within 2 inches. Microphone techniques change when you are recording multiple singers, unless you are recording them the same way that you are recording the lead vocal one track at a time. Although I will be explaining this in more detail later, stereo-matched microphone techniques, in this case the XY pattern, can be used when recording multiple singers at the same time to achieve a stereo audio signal that represents the imaging of the singers in front of the microphone. You could also use a single mono microphone and record multiple singers multiple times to achieve a larger sound, but you will mostly find that one microphone per section, like tenors, altos, or sopranos, will be sufficient to reblend and control the levels of its choir sections. Having had the chance to experiment with recording full choirs in my studio and in churches, I have learned that using the spaced microphone setup at the distance rule of 3:1 creates a well-balanced and phase-coherent result. It is important that the recorded signal image matches what the source material sounded like. If the recording does not match the width and imaging of the source, you are stuck with the result. There are only minor things that can be changed in a stereo recording after the fact. After all the vocals have been recorded, they have to be properly edited and trimmed. Depending on if you were the engineer for the recording session or not, and if you are familiar with the audio in the session, you might find or receive a session from a client that has not been properly edited. This can be tough, especially if you are used to wearing the producer's hat. Just remember, in our case, you are the engineer, and the engineer does not have the same decision-making power as the producer. Over the years, I have received many sessions where the punches were not properly edited. I usually immediately fix my punch-ins after each take, but not every engineer does this. If you receive a session like this, just like the vocal project we are working on this week, some decision-making is involved, but it will be easy if you follow 4 simple rules. First, always trim to the closest edit from the punch. Second, no edit should touch any visible or audible audio on either side of the edit, as seen here. This example shows a perfect editing point between a word or a phrase and the breath. Third, avoid trimming in the middle of words. And this is a tricky one, unless it is necessary because the performance requires you to fix it. And fourth, don't delete any breath. The breath is a natural part of the recording. Furthermore, you will find that individual tracks will require individual editing treatment, where sections and things can be edited together. If you see the regions and clips and they end together at the section, chorus or verse, then they should be trimmed together. The danger in trimming at the end of the phrase is often that you may cut off necessary parts of the word. To make sure this does not happen, always add additional space, 1 to 2 seconds, at the end of a section or phrase. Use this 1 or 2 seconds for your fade time. Eliminating breath from vocal tracks creates a vocal that sounds robotic and unnatural. And that is why we do not delete breath and sometimes even add additional breath to a vocal track. You also don't want your edits to be in the middle of breath. As in the image above, edits should be between visible or audible audio clips, right where it looks like silence. Once you have finished with editing the chorus of the 12 tracks of background vocals, your final result should look close to this. Each individual audio clip is properly trimmed and edited, crossfaded, faded in or out, and the section beginnings and ends are trimmed together. Proper editing is more than just perfection in the audible quality, but it also should look perfect. That brings me to fading. When you should fade and what should be faded. You should also be aware that Pro Tools has 2 types of fades, equal power and equal gain. Because Pro Tools edits do not automatically jump to the zero crossing like they do in Logic Pro, it is imperative that every clip has a fade in, fade out, or crossfade to eliminate potential clicks and pops that might occur at the beginning or end of each clip. Logic Pro has spoiled you with automatic zero crossing edits. Although no clicks or pops occur 95% of the time, you should be aware of the danger of missing clicks and pops that might still happen in your mix or when you're printing your stems and final mixes. Equal power fades are recommended for material that is not phase coherent. This basically means you should use equal power when you are cross-fading 2 songs into each other, like a DJ when he creates a mixtape. Equal power does not drop in volume and therefore has the danger of clipping if both sources are too close to unity gain. Equal gain is great for cross-fading similar material like vocal to vocal, bass to bass, or guitar to guitar. It is also the right option to avoid the clipping that may occur when using equal power crossfades. Most of the fades we create are on tracks that contain the same source like a vocal or a bass. This means most fades are equal gain fades with a linear shape. Audio is unpredictable sometimes and each edit is different. That's why it is important to experiment with the fade types, length, and shapes to achieve the perfect edits. If you are working with drum loops, for instance, or even looping any instrument, remember that equal power fades work best at the loop point because it does not drop in volume. Comping or combining lead vocals means to take all the best performances from several tracks or playlists and move them to one final track that only contains what you believe is the best the singer can do. But combining lead vocals is more than just picking the best pitch or best timing and performance of a singer. You have to have an understanding and artistry on the part of the engineer or producer performing the comping that will take the performance and make it more than what the artist could ever do by themselves. It takes a great ear and good memory. First, you will have to listen to all the takes, one phrase at a time, and select what you believe is the best the singer performed, but at the same time keep in mind how the song flows and how it will connect to the next phrase. The editing has to sound flawless and should sound like the singer performed the entire song in one take. Comping is like magic. I always love the moment when even the singer believes they actually performed what they are listening to. It is not important how you achieve the perfect vocal, only that you do. There are several methods of comping, one phrase at a time. One is to color the takes you like and then move them up to the comp track once you are finished with a section. The other one is just to move the ones you like up. I prefer the first method because a lot of vocal takes are often so close that I need several times to listen to make the decision. When you move the region from individual tracks, this does not apply in playlist mode. You have to hold control to avoid slipping horizontally and moving clips out of time with the song. Once you have finished moving all the clips you like to the comp track, they will have to be properly trimmed and edited perfectly as described previously. After trimming, all the clips should be faded to avoid any pops and clicks and ensure that the transitions are as smooth as possible. If you are editing in playlist mode in Pro Tools, you do not have to push control when moving clips up or even separate the clips. Simply use the Select tool to select the region of the clip you would like to move to the comp playlist by pushing this button. Logic Pro's playlist recording involves using the Marquee tool to select the part of the region you want to hear in the comp. This has its positive and negative aspects for me. Since Logic edits to the zero crossing automatically, there is no need for crossfades. But there are situations where a fade can make an edit work better. If that is the case, you would have to apply additional steps to be able to add a crossfade to the vocal comp track. During the recording process, I often take notes on the lyric sheet when I feel particularly strong about a take, and I either circle it or underline it to remind myself of that. This doesn't always mean that I will feel about it the same way when I listen to it the following day. Taking notes can speed up the comping process, but make sure to listen with fresh ears to every take just to double check. With 6 to 10 takes per phrase or section, it can become quite a memory game to identify which take was the one that works the best and with the rest of the vocal comp. That is why I try to listen to only one phrase at a time, one track at a time, and not an entire verse or chorus. You have to be extremely picky when you comp and listen for every syllable and word to create the perfect vocal, and that would be impossible if the selection is too long. Before we start choosing all the best performances to the comp track, we should consider what it is that actually makes the performance perfect. For that, we should look at the vocal qualities we should compare. The most important quality is emotion. If a vocal is perfect in pitch and timing but has no emotion, it is not as desirable as a slightly flat take that has great emotion. Pitch and timing and the way it is phrased are also very important. Don't forget the importance of how the singer projected and what kind of vocal sound he produced. All these factors are essential and have to not only work together, but they feed off each other. The perfect vocal take would be where all these elements are working together in harmony, but that is rarely the case. Even great performances often need a little help or editing. This is important to understand because it should influence how we comp. Knowing what can and cannot be fixed will change the way you pick lines. If we consider what we know about editing, we can make the statement that pitch, timing, and phrasing can be edited easily. Elastic Audio, Flex Audio, or even additional plugins like Melodyne, Waves Tuner, Autotune in graphic mode can be used to refine and improve the performance and fix these three elements. But there are issues we cannot fix: emotion and the sound of the voice. These are two elements that we should prioritize when we comp or even during the recording process. So what does this mean for our editing and comping? If you take all these into consideration, you should pick a take with emotions over a take with better pitch, timing, or phrasing. You should also push the singer when recording to maximize their emotion and almost over-exaggerate. I have yet to hear somebody mention that a song has too much emotion. Now, if you are done with comping, it is time to go through it one more time and double check your work. Check all transitions. Make sure all the breath and clips are perfectly trimmed and faded. You may sometimes hear a clip that is not as loud as the others, which will make it sound out of place, but this can be fixed easily. You can use any appropriate Audio Suite plugin to render the vocals gain up or down. Or if you're in Pro Tools 10 or above, you can use individual clip gain to adjust the level of the clip. Doubling vocals is a technique that has been used since the multi-track became available on lead vocals. Often almost inaudible, it can add strength to the lead if used lightly, or if used a little louder in the mix, add a chorus-like effect to a lead vocal. I hear it in songs all the time, especially in choruses, to create a separation, a difference between different sections, and to fill up the lead vocal for that part. You should look out and ensure that the double matches the lead vocal perfectly. Not everyone is good at doing this. I have worked with fantastic singers that could not match themselves, and I have worked with mediocre singers that were able to match themselves so perfectly that it sounded like one track. It is not an easy thing to do. Matching means pitch, timing, the feel, and the tone have to be the same. If the tracks are not close, it will be very obvious and sounds more like a background vocal than a double. Doubles are mostly hidden in the mix and simply there to support and strengthen, especially with softer singers. It works even better if your compression is a little stronger on the double to control the dynamic range, because with processing, it will not increase the lead vocal's dynamic range overall. Mixed at 30 to 50%, the lead vocal will sound thicker and fuller. If you go above that in your mix, the double becomes more of an effect. Additional EQ can fill some sonic holes, or you could create more bite with adding saturation, distortion, or harmonics. Adding a stereo chorus plugin can almost imitate a double-tracked background vocal and give the lead more width for specific sections of the song. Here are some examples of songs using the doubling technique. You can search for them on Spotify or YouTube or Google. Simply search for the title and the artist and take a listen. Gautier's chorus, for instance, has a very loud double where his verse is very close and intimate and single-tracked. Earth, Wind & Fire's first verse has a double that is almost inaudible, and Peter Gabriel's Big Time is doubled and sometimes even tripled throughout the entire song at a very loud and audible volume. Recording triple vocals has to be done as accurately as the double and can be mixed slightly off-center. If you don't want to keep them all centered, you can pan each, the double and the triple, slightly left and right off the center lead vocal. If you pan it too far, it will sound more like a background vocal part in unison. It also helps to change the EQ slightly to avoid thickening the lead vocal up excessively, and can be enhanced with saturation, distortion, or modulation effects like chorus or ensemble. Recording background vocals, or BGVs, which is what we will call them from here on out, is very similar to recording lead vocal in the sense that you are also striving for emotion, pitch, and exceptional timing and phrasing. Background vocals are often recorded on individual tracks, just like the lead vocal. But if you want a bigger sound, you should try to record them as a group. When recording a group of people, the microphone polar pattern and style of miking will determine how the image of the recorded material will be captured. Try to imagine a group of singers in the studio and how you would capture them. You could record them by setting up a set of stereo matched microphones in several different ways, or use individual microphones for each singer. You could also record it on one microphone in mono and record it multiple times to be able to pan them and create space that way. I personally like options, and being that we have a recording environment that gives us close to 192 tracks, I prefer capturing it several different ways at the same time. It really depends on how many microphones and preamps you have at your disposal if you are able to do this, but recording the stereo image of the singers and adding the individual tracks additionally gives you a lot of control to reblend the balance of the singers if necessary. There are a few tricks that will enhance your individual tracks. Stacking is obvious, and I usually record 4 to 5 tracks of BGVs per note. But an interesting trick I observed and used is to use different microphones for different parts. Each microphone has a distinctive sonic quality that, if added together, can enhance and enlarge the sound of the BGVs. Although you might think that recording individual tracks of 16 tracks should sound as big as recording a group of 16 singers that was recorded at the same time, I can tell you from experience that this is not true. I have tried this with strings and with vocals, and groups sound always bigger. There are several factors that play a role in why this is, but they are just my theories. My first thought is that the voices and the audio vibration is interacting with each other, causing extra harmonics and additional frequencies. In addition, the room's ambience can reach critical sound pressure, which is the maximum at which point there is a natural compression and therefore creates a sonic change similar to compression. Again, just theories, but the fact remains that recording one violin 30 times does not sound as big and full as 20 violins recorded one time. Individual tracks let you reblend and rebalance the individual tracks however you need, but the blend recorded in a stereo recording is pretty much unchangeable. It is therefore a good idea to make sure that the singers blend well in the room. Don't be afraid to tell singers to change positions or sing louder or lower. You are in charge, and it is your responsibility, in the most polite way, to arrange the singers in a way that give you exactly what you are looking for and what works best for the song. Especially with choir recordings. It is common that a choir has stronger and weaker singers in regards to their ability, and it is your job to find the best singers in the group and make sure that they are leading the pack. The room itself is also important. When recording with a stereo mic setup, the distance of the group to the microphone inherently records a lot of the acoustic space of the recording environment. But you can control this environment with blankets or other sound controlling fabrics to ensure that the room has the perfect sound for your recording. Avoid rooms with big glass windows, since they tend to throw a lot of phased high frequencies back into the room. There are some negative aspects about recording groups. One, there is no way to edit the pitches, timing, phrasing of multiple voices. So, what you hear is what you get. You have to make sure that everybody's singing right at the same time, which I can tell you from experience almost never happens. But that little bit of off that you get from a group is actually the charm of it. It is exactly what makes it sound big. Even when I record groups with stereo miking, I can still record multiple takes and accomplish an amazing, tremendously big sound. Here are some tips that are important no matter if you're recording lead or BGVs. The headphone mix has to be just right for the singer to feel comfortable. I recommend to create a separate mix for your control room so you can hear what you need to hear. Singers usually want the track very loud and sing with one side off the headphone. It would be hard for you to properly hear the performance. When you record doubles or triples for leads, or when you are recording BGV stacks, every track has to match all of the other ones for that note and group perfectly. The first track is the hardest, and it gets easier for the singer with each copy they create, because they can hear themselves performing. You should play the first vocal when recording the first 4 copies, and then turn each copy lower than the first take, so they hear 1 and the new take, 1 and the new take. When you are finished with the 4 or 5 you are recording, re-record the first one, listening to the 4th or 5th track instead, which should be the best one because the singer has performed it multiple times. Another issue I often have with singers is their pronunciation. I know this is funny coming from a German with a strong accent like mine, but my accent is gone when I sing. No matter what genre I'm producing, if the audience cannot understand every word performed, it is impossible for them to connect with the emotion of the song. Normal pronunciation is often not enough. Overpronouncing the words does not translate into the recording as one would expect and usually sounds normal. Many singers, even the great ones, often struggle with timing. One trick I learned many years ago when working with Backstreet Boys was to make sure that the singers are moving. I don't mean moving as moving away from the microphone or moving around, but moving a limb. The wrist, the elbow, or the foot are all an easy way to get the singer to lock into the groove. Nobody can have good timing standing still. Watch any instrumentalists and how their feet keep time. Singers have to find a way to do the same without causing any extra noise or vibrations in the room. If you created a separate headphone mix as I recommended earlier, give the singer whatever they want. It doesn't matter if you think they are wrong. It's about them getting comfortable. Many singers ask you to constantly change it, and that is fine too. Their ears are continuously focusing on different elements of the song and refocus constantly. I also learned that it is important to pan tracks according to what is being recorded. I tell or ask the singer that the one they are listening to is on the left, and to slightly slide the right side of the headphones backward. That way, they can hear themselves better in the room on the right side and focus on the one they are supposed to match on the left. It is not as important as you may think to record hot or as close to the top level as possible. Think about it. If you recorded at 16-bit and your input level was only minus 20 decibel, you may have reduced the bit rate of the recording by a few bits and therefore reduced the quality. But at 24-bit, recording at, let's say, minus 10 decibel, your bit reduction is less than 2-bit, which is pretty much inaudible. The second reason is that you will have to reduce loudly recorded material excessively when subgrouping to avoid clipping the bus. The better the tracks match, the better they will sound. It is that simple. The endings are often the biggest problem, especially on long notes like ahs and oohs. Give the singer a count to make sure all the tracks end together. Singers also have the tendency to get too relaxed singing the same parts over and over and let go of the energy they presented when they first started. It takes constant reminding and pushing to keep the singer's energy level up throughout the recording session. Breaks can help with this, and encouragement really goes a long way. If you ever get a chance to work with a choir, working on dynamics can be a fun experience and bring very cool arrangement elements to your production. Swells, soft and loud parts are just some ideas that can elevate an arrangement and song. You should have watched the lynda.com tutorial Time Warping by now, and if you haven't, stop this video now and watch it. It is important that you have a basic understanding of the time warping functions before continuing. Elastic Audio was introduced in Pro Tools version 8 and hasn't been changed since. It is a powerful and often overlooked plugin that lets you warp audio in real time, something that was unthinkable before. If you work with a lot of drum loops, it can automatically adjust the tempo of your drum loop to the session, just like Apple Loops performs in Logic Pro. For our purpose, we are looking to enhance a performance of a singer or maybe even an instrument. Being able to shift individual parts of an audio clip and pitch shift notes in real time is undoubtedly my favorite function of Elastic Audio. If you are a remixer, you might find the tick-based function of adjusting imported audio to the new tempo very useful, and the ability to change the feel and timing of vocals. But you could take things even further, extending clips past the safe edit range and create incredible audio effects for sound design and special effects. And all this in real time and without destroying or changing the original audio. You can simply take the plugin off the track and the audio is restored, or you can render it. Film composers can stretch musical parts that are already recorded to match video without destructive changes. Elastic Audio comes with 5 different plugin versions: polyphonic, rhythmic, monophonic, Varispeed, and X-Form. Polyphonic mode should be used when you are warping complex materials that contains multiple layered notes like piano, rhythmic guitar, or even full tracks. Rhythmic mode should be used when you are warping audio source material containing a lot of transients like drums, percussion sounds, or other instruments, even vocals. Monophonic mode should be used when warping single note tracks and instruments, and only the timing needs to be adjusted. Monophonic mode will produce better results for monophonic material, but has its limitations, which we will discuss in a minute. Varispeed mode links the audio to timeline and tempo changes, including pitch editing. And finally, X-Form has all the other features combined, but cannot apply changes in real time. This is also the mode that produces the best audio result with the least amount of artifacts. Rhythmic and Varispeed mode lets you edit the pitch of a whole clip. That means that if you hear a note that needs to be changed, the note has to be separated and converted into its own clip. Although monophonic would be a better mode with less artifacts to edit vocals, monophonic mode does not have pitch editing as a function and is therefore incorrect for what we need to do. If you should edit in rhythmic mode and then change to monophonic mode, the pitch changes would be inaudible, but not lost. Whenever you change back, the pitch changes would become audible again because the metadata is still there. To achieve the best possible result, one should change the mode to X-Form when finished editing and render the audio. But we will not be creating all the extra audio files this would add to our session. It would create an unreasonable session size that would extend your upload and my download time too much. Just keep this method in mind if you ever use Elastic Audio in the future. When finished with editing, X-Form and render. After you would enable the Elastic Audio plugin to rhythmic mode on a track, change your view to analysis. You will immediately see a lot of little lines called event markers. Now change your view to warp view and shift-click one of the event markers to convert it into a warp marker. You will see a small arrow that differentiates the warp markers from the event markers. When you grab an event marker and convert it to a warp marker while holding Shift, you may also recognize that the markers on each side also turn into warp markers called anchors. You can warp audio in the warp view and add or delete markers by double-clicking, but the analysis view only lets you add, relocate, or delete markers. You cannot warp in the analysis view. If your track is sample-based, the options to change settings in the elastic property window are different than the options when your track is tick-based. Tick-based tracks work best for instruments and drums, but especially drum loops. You can select a clip on a tick-based track and tell Elastic Audio what the original tempo is to automatically change the loop to your session's tempo. All the tracks in the vocal sessions are currently sample-based and need to stay sample-based. It makes little sense to change them to tick-based unless we would try to quantize the audio, which almost never works correctly with vocal tracks. Both of the Elastic Audio property windows, tick or sample-based, have a setting called sensitivity. This is the most important setting when working with Elastic Audio. The sensitivity setting is the threshold for how fine Pro Tools looks at each zero crossing or transient, and a high setting usually results in an excessive amount of event markers. Changing this to a lower setting ensures the reduction of unnecessary artifacts in the audio caused by warping regions that are too small. The correct setting should be slightly lower than required, and event markers should be added by hand to make up for the markers lost by lowering the sensitivity setting. Not applying the right sensitivity setting will create many erroneous audio artifacts that could have easily been avoided. There are several ways audio can be warped with Elastic Audio. To time warp entire regions, for instance, you would use accordion mode. But for moving individual markers and the audio attached to them, we will use range warp. To apply range warp, hold Shift before you select the marker with the grab tool. If you are in slip mode, you will see that you can move freely back and forth and warp the audio slightly in each direction. If proper anchors have been initiated, the audio around the warped marker should be unaffected. If you have too many markers, the warping will cause a wobble in artifacts in the audio surrounding the warp. Eliminate unnecessary markers first by changing the sensitivity setting for the entire track first, and use the grab tool and double-click to delete or add any additional markers. Editing audio this way takes patience and time. You cannot rush through this and have to experiment with moving markers slightly in the desired directions and keep tweaking it until it's perfect. You are only finished when the warping sounds perfect and the edit did not create artifacts. If it did, keep experimenting with the marker's position and the markers around it until it is correct. Although Elastic Audio, and I need to include Flex Time and Logic Pro as well, is a very acceptable and efficient way to change and fix your audio, there are several plugins and softwares that you can use to accomplish similar edits, and sometimes with better results. First, we have Antares Autotune, best known for songs like I Believe by Cher, and its usage by artists like T-Pain. Second, and here's my favorite editing tool, Celemony's Melodyne, known for its ability to create edits that are smooth and almost unidentifiable, and being able to separate pitches of multi-pitch instruments. Third, we have Wavestune, a powerful plugin with some additional abilities to change timing and phrasing. Fourth, I want to show you Logic's Pitch Correct, a very simple but efficient pitch editing tool. And last, Cubase vVocal. Autotune is great for quick fixes. I often use it on rough mixes, applying it very lightly to give the client a better idea on what the final result will sound like. I also like to use it for the well-known vocoder sound that can be achieved by setting it very aggressively and apply it to specific phrases. The problem I personally have with Autotune is that it's very obvious when used, and I often hear it even when it's only applied lightly. If you get the chance to use graphical mode, you will see that the small window size and the limitation in its tools makes working in it very cumbersome. Autotune can also only be applied to a single track at a time. Commonly known artists using Autotune excessively are Lil Wayne, Drake, T-Pain, and Akon. Melodyne, on the other hand, is probably one of the most powerful tools that has been released in years. The new Logic Pro has a very similar tool to fix pitch and time, but it's missing some of the features like being able to split chords into individual notes. Imagine editing a piano part that has one single bad note in a chord and being able to change that note. Powerful stuff. I usually don't use many of the automatic functions to keep the edits to only the notes and phrases that actually need to be edited. I load all my background vocals into the full Melodyne Studio software, which has unlimited tracks, and align all the pitches and timings, creating perfect background vocal tracks. When working with BGVs, I sometimes use the pitch automatic function with a very sensitive or conservative setting to achieve overall better pitch and then align it by hand. Once the tempo has been set correctly in Melodyne, changing the tempo of the session will automatically make the audio follow at an amazing quality without Mickey Mousing the audio unless you go overboard. The quality of the sound, also called the formant, is one of the functions I've only seen in Melodyne. And you can create some cool hip-hop, pitch-down, dark rap vocals with this function. But the most important element for me is that editing with Melodyne leaves the audio sounding perfect, without many, if any, artifacts or erroneous audio that exposes the fact that the audio has been edited. I think it's our responsibility as producers to create the illusion that the singer sounds better than they might are, but hide the fact that it was edited at all. The bad part about how I use Melodyne is that avoiding the automatic pitch and quantize functions makes the process of editing in Melodyne slow and time-consuming. But I don't mind how long it takes, as long as the result is perfect. Wavetunes is similar to graphical mode in Autotune. You have to load your audio into the plugin first. Basically, you have to record it in, then you can edit it. Wavetune has better functions and tools than Autotune graphical mode, but it is limited in how the splitting of audio clips is handled. It is also slow to work with, but used to be my tool before Melodyne was released. And quickly, Logic's pitch correct only works on automatic mode unless you know how to MIDI automate the plugins. So, I think we are ready to start working on our project. If you have not downloaded the session from the link in the instruction PDF yet, go ahead, pause this video and do this now. Open the session and immediately save it into the same folder using the naming convention last first vocal -mst. Saving it to the same folder ensures that when you submit the entire folder through Gobbler, all necessary files will be contained within that folder. If you would create a new folder or save the session in another location, Pro Tools would create a new audio files folder in that location and only add the new audio to it. The other audio would still play back for you, but it would only be linked to the other folder. Now that you have the project in front of you, I will give you a quick checklist on all the tasks that need to be edited to successfully complete this project. Step 1. Edit all the BGVs in regards to fixing the punch in and out points with proper trimming and fading. Second, you will have to enable elastic audio on the 3 specific tracks that require warping, and that is background vocal 4, 8, and 12. Third, you will have to comp the lead vocal in the second verse and second pre-chorus. Please don't forget the second pre-chorus. Fourth, we will blend and re-record the previously edited BGVs to a newly created stereo audio track and blend them as you are mixing them with the track. But only the panned and imaged background vocals will be recorded to the new track. Fifth, you will apply basic dynamic processing, EQ, compression, and de-esser to the 3 vocal tracks, 2 lead vocals and stereo background vocal. You will then create a standard time-based setup by creating an aux channel and sending from the vocals to the input of the aux channel that has a reverb plugin inserted. And last, you will create a rough mix of the track and the vocals with an output level range between -6 and -3 decibels peak value. Let's take a close look at each one of these steps. Step 1. When you look at the tracks, background vocals 1 through 12 in the first chorus, you will see that the punch in and punch out points of the previous recordings have not been properly adjusted. You will have to edit each clip to your best ability and to the closest editing point for the following tracks: background vocal 1 through 3, background vocal 5, 6, 7, and background vocal 9, 10, 11. You will then have to move forward to the second pre-chorus and edit all background vocal 1 through 12 for the entire second pre-chorus section. You will see that it says in the instructions to make sure to edit to the closest possible point, which is very essential to have a uniform project across all students. After you have completed the trimming on these particular tracks, we will enable the Rhythmic Elastic Audio plugin on background vocal 4, 8, and 12 and fix the timing and pitch of these phrases to match the corresponding tracks. That means background vocal 4 should match to background vocal 1. Background vocal 8 should match background vocal 5, and background vocal 12 should match background vocal 9. Elastic audio warping is only necessary in the chorus, not in the second pre-chorus. Right after you enabled the Rhythmic Elastic Audio plugin, you should change your view to Analysis, open the Elastic Properties, select the audio in the track and change the sensitivity setting to lower the auto-created event markers to represent a reasonable amount that elects the phrases rather than every single zero crossing. And again, do not change the mode of the track from sample to tick-based. It is not necessary since we are not dealing with loop-able audio. After the sensitivity setting has been properly adjusted, you can start soloing and matching the previously mentioned tracks to each other. You might find a few phrases that are laid as a clip, and in that case, you can nudge the audio before you warp it. Don't forget that elastic audio event markers are just an estimate and can be moved in the analysis or warp view. Fix the pitch and timing of the clips, and when you are done with the task, make sure that all the transitions between the audio clips are smooth and are faded as described earlier. I've seen students in the past chop up everything and try to fix it with nudging only. Although this can sometimes result in a reasonable or usable audio in edits, it would defeat the purpose of this exercise and would be marked as incorrect. Once all the tracks are properly trimmed, you can edit the beginning and endings of the sections together for a smooth look and feel. Fades at these points can be a little longer and often require different curves. Don't be afraid to experiment with the lengths and curves to find the smoothest, most natural sound. Also, consider that some crossfades might sound better with equal power and some might be better with equal gain. The only way to really understand and know the difference is to play with these options and experiment.